I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Listen, I imagine by now you know who MrBeast is. You know that MrBeast is one of the biggest YouTubers in the world, but I don't know, maybe you don't know what his deal is. His gimmick, I think for lack of a better word, is just getting ordinary people to compete for cash, for like a lot of cash. And he's got a new show out. It's on Prime Video, and it's called Beast Games. Take a listen.
I am standing on $5 million of real money, the largest grand prize in entertainment history. And competing for this $5 million are these 1,000 contestants. Come on in.
I grew up homeless, and now I want to help other homeless kids. And that $5 million would mean everything to help me get there.
It would provide me the opportunity to retire my dad.
There's a lot of clowns that want to donate the money. I'm buying jet skis and gold chains.
That is a bit of the first episode of Beast Games. It became the #1 show in Canada on Prime Video. You can imagine why. Rebecca Jennings has been watching. Rebecca, thanks for being on the show, friend.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. Listen, you wrote an article for Vox, and the headline was, "I can't stop watching MrBeast's new game show, and I hate myself." Rebecca, why do you hate yourself?
I think that a lot of us, with somewhat working brains, like to think that we are like too good for this kind of entertainment, this kind of like extremely lowest common denominator slop. But no, I found myself glued to the chair while I was watching this for work. My partner actually came in and he got sucked in too. And it was just like so ridiculously compelling and just so like spirit ruining at the same time that it made me like not only like hate the show, hate the people on it, but like hate myself for like being sucked in.
I mean, look, just the tone and register of speech that MrBeast uses is like, I don't look away because he's yelling at people, being like, I have $5 million. I'm going to keep watching this thing. But maybe we should explain to people what this game show is. Do you want to just maybe set it up a little bit? What is happening on the show?
Yeah, so basically, like many of MrBeast's YouTube content, he takes a bunch of people, puts them in these like crazy giant stadium warehouse things, and then has them do these very like bizarre challenges for money. And some of them like aren't even interesting to watch. They're not like super physical. They're just like if we give you the opportunity to make a little bit of money, like would you be willing to cut yourself off from like the whole $5 million pot? Anyway, it starts with like 1,000 people, and they're all in this like weird warehouse arena. They're all standing on these platforms. And they have to decide whether they're like willing to sacrifice themselves in order for their team to go. So there's a lot of like, will you be willing to get out of the competition? Because eventually they have to whittle down these 1,000 people just to one person. So there's a lot of mechanisms where it's like, are you willing to leave to save your other players? And then at some point they take them to an island in Panama. They take them to this like kind of fake city called Beast City, where they have to do these like more physical challenges. And then it ends in a Vegas stadium. And we haven't gotten there yet. Those episodes are not out yet.
I don't want to go to Beast City, Rebecca. That does not sound like a place that has a lot of good public infrastructure. But also, can I just say, I hear that and I go, that sounds like you're watching Squid Game. And he has said this is a little bit, what MrBeast has said, like this has been inspired by Squid Game. What are the similarities that pop up watching, Beast Games and watching Squid Game to you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the main one is that you have a lot of people that seem really desperate for a ton of money, and they are also wearing tracksuits with numbers on them. Like contestants are referred to as their number, which is like just another layer of the dehumanizing effect that MrBeast has on these people. And it's a lot of the times it's adults doing like kids games. So it's like, like holding a ball, like catching a ball, or like building a block tower. These are things that like Squid Game was so eerie because it was adults playing kids games, but if you lose, you literally die. And it also echoes some of that in the first episode where everyone's standing on these platforms. And if they get eliminated, the platform opens up and they fall into what seems like this big abyss. It's like, it's a couple of feet drop and they land on like a foam pit. Like this is what I've read behind the scenes, but like, it seems like they are being cast into hell. So it feels very Squid Game-y. Yeah. I
just want to pick up on some of the words that you've used to describe the show. In your piece, you called it poisonous. In this conversation, you have called it soul ruining. There's something morally compromising about watching Beast Games for you. What is like the most poisonous moment of the show? Like what's a moment that sort of highlights it? Like, yikes, the thing that I'm watching, I'm really uncomfortable sort of moving through this thing.
Yeah, I think it was around episode 3 or 4 when you start to see the dynamics between the men and women on the show and the white and the non-white people on the show.
Hmm.
And I've seen a lot of Mr. Beast stuff. I've written about him before. He typically does not really get into that world. He doesn't want to like up the narratives where it's like these very just like icky kind of relationships between gender and race, but you can tell that there are professional reality TV producers on the other end of this. Unlike with his typical YouTube videos, you can tell they are like salivating and like when they see the dynamics between these two groups of people. I'll give you one example. One is like you have these two brothers, they get locked in a solitary confinement room with this woman who's a mother, and one of them has to sacrifice themselves. So a lot of the times the contestants will be like, okay, well, I'll just like roll a dice, and whoever gets the lowest number, they have to sacrifice themselves. It's just random, whatever.
But we all
And
agree that this is what's good, how
they all agree that that's how it's going to work.
Yeah.
And there's two cases in which, so with these brothers, they slowly like manipulate this woman who's sobbing to like sacrifice herself. Meanwhile, they're like laughing at her because she's willing to like do that. And then in another case, you have these two Black people and this one white guy who they do the same thing. They like agree to do like the dice roll, whatever. And then he loses and he's like, just kidding. I'm not going to do it. I refuse. And I know this is on TV, but like, I'm just not going to do it. And you're like, you wanted to like rip your hands through the screen and like strangle this guy. Like they are so evil. And then in a later episode, there's this guy who kind of becomes this like cult-like figure among the contestants because he does this thing where he gives up $1 million to save his team, which is kind of stupid because the only reason you're there is to win millions of dollars. So it's like, why wouldn't you just take it?
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's sort of like these factions. One is really pro this guy, Jeremy, and one is really like, this guy is like manipulating all of us. And it's very like boundaried by gender. And so the women are like, this guy, doesn't care about us. He's only going to take his men along. And of course he does. So.
But I mean, like, my next question for you was like, what makes the show so addictive? But I think you just laid it out, which is like, you rarely get a chance to watch a morality play in front of you. Like you don't, you get a lot of different like things that are sort of like hinting at morality, but nothing as explicit as, moments like that. Like you don't get a lot of shows that sort of make that dynamic right in your face like that.
Yeah, it's much darker. And I know that there's been so many really dark, really ethically horrible reality shows, especially in like the 2000s era when all this was exploding.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that like this, it's 2025 and we're still just like, well, like let's exploit people's most base instincts and turn them into like adults acting like toddlers to like get a chance to win a couple $1 million, and just like seeing the ways in which they will betray each other and manipulate each other for a very tiny chance of getting some money out of it. And MrBeast's obviously like exploits this and is profiting off of it. And as is Amazon, who are, Amazon is like one of the most potentially allegedly exploitative companies in like the world. And, you also as a viewer, you're also feeling exploited kind of because it's so watchable and it's so compelling. While at the same time just making you hate everything about the world.
What a beautiful exploitation circus. It's like a whole full circle of exploitation. We also want to acknowledge like the show has had some lawsuits filed against them. Like that is not a small deal. So there's an Ontario Ministry of Labour investigation that's going on here in Canada about a workplace injury on the Toronto set of Beast Games. What are some of the complaints that you've come across around just like how the show was made?
Yeah, so the lawsuit is heavily redacted, but we have complaints of sexual harassment, people being denied food, medication, water, sleep, etc. Contestants had to sign a form that was like, I understand that I could die during this. And according to many contestants, like they saw people leaving in stretchers, they saw like hospitalizations, they saw people like vomiting, and just like pretty gnarly stuff was happening on that set that, they're currently suing the company for.
Look, Rebecca, this show is about the terrible lengths that people go to for money. It's hosted by a guy who, as you've written, is famously uncharismatic. Those are your words. What makes that a winning formula, you think, in this moment that we're in? Because it's the #1 show on Prime Video in this country.
I know, it's really interesting. You see like TV hosts from the past being like very like likable and friendly and whatever, but MrBeast like doesn't really have any of that. And I think that's part of the reason why he's so good at gaming. He's so much more interested in like gaming the YouTube algorithm and making this very like kind of like very watchable show and less interested in sort of the person-to-person interactions that you would think a TV host would be good at. And whenever he's kind of in the position of having to like comfort a contestant that just got kicked out of the game, he's like, yeah, that sucks. And then it's just like, it just cuts away, and it's like so upsetting to watch. And I argue that, you know, his friends, like his kind of beast gang, which are like his friends from when he grew up, and they're now his employees, and they kind of just like roam around interviewing the contestants. Like they're worse. Like they're also just like,
they're more
like,
detached.
I mean, they're not more detached, but they're just like constantly being like, bro, that's crazy. It's like, you designed this. Like, why are you shocked about anything? And they just, you know, have nothing really to say other than like internet slang that they think is funny at whatever week it is. So yeah, it's just like, I know that you guys are being paid like bajillions of dollars to do this, and yet you're so bad at it.
Rebecca Jennings, I just want you to know from the bottom of my heart, you would absolutely be in my Beast gang. So just in case there's ever been a question for you, your place is secured. Thank you for your time. This has been a wonderful delight. I'm going to go watch the show and feel morally compromised about myself. It'll be great, but thank you.
Hell yeah. Can't wait. All right. Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. Rebecca Jennings is a senior correspondent at Vox. The first 5 episodes of Beast Games are out now on Prime Video.